Hi and welcome to the Back in History channel. I do hope you are doing fine as always. In this edition, we are discussing the Queen and the Prime Minister she worked with. During her reign as Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II had the rare privilege of working with a total of 15 Prime Ministers. The first was Winston Churchill. Churchill served as British Prime Minister from 1951 to 1955. Recall that Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1952. That means that Churchill was already in office before the Queen's coronation. He was welcomed into office by the Queen's father. Churchill was a well-experienced politician and a consummate administrator, and was quite skeptical about the ability of a 25-year-old queen to discharge the functions of the British monarchy at the time. He said that the queen was too young and still a child. He is however reported to have been very impressed in the course of time at the way and manner the queen discharged her responsibilities. They both became very close, and when Churchill resigned in 1955, the Queen wrote a handwritten letter telling him how much she would miss him. She is quoted to have said amongst others that, quote, "No one would ever, for me, be able to hold the place of my first Prime Minister, to whom both my husband and I owe so much, and for whose wise guidance during the early years of my reign I shall always be so profoundly grateful." Unquote. Winston Churchill died in 1965 and the Queen was in attendance at his funeral. The second Prime Minister was Sir Anthony Eden, who was in office from 1955 to 1957. Eden's tenure was really short. It is reported that his working relationship with the Queen wasn't too good, and his other problem was the fact that Winston Churchill had left behind big shoes which were always going to be a struggle for his immediate successors. The third Prime Minister was Harold Macmillan, who served from 1957 to 1963. Harold had a good working relationship with the Queen. He was particularly impressed by the Queen's knowledge of foreign affairs. When he took ill in the course of his tenure as Prime Minister, one of the important dignitaries that visited him in the hospital was the Queen herself. The fourth Prime Minister was Sir Alec Douglas-Home, who served from 1963 to 1964. Alec was a childhood friend of the Queen's mother. He grew up in the same neighborhood with the Queen's family and was already known to the Queen. Both Alec and the Queen had a good working relationship, but Alec was in office for 363 days only. That is, less than 1 year. Harold Wilson was number 5. He served from 1964 to 1970 and served again from 1974 to 1976. He was the first Labour Prime Minister that the Queen worked with. He had a good working relationship with the Queen and became one of the Queen's favourite Prime Ministers. Prime Minister number 6 was Edward Heath, who was in office from 1970 to 1974. Edward brought the Conservatives back to power. He is said to have been one of the Queen's least favourite Prime Ministers. His views about the Commonwealth were different from those of the Queen, and the Queen is said to have taken it personally. Despite their differences, Edward Heath is said to have held the Queen in high esteem, describing her as, quote, "one of the best informed persons in the world." The seventh Prime Minister was James Callaghan, who served from 1976 to 1979. Callaghan is quoted to have said that he got friendliness but not friendship from the Queen. The 8th Prime Minister that the Queen worked with was Margaret Thatcher, who served from 1979 to 1990. Margaret was the first female to occupy the office of Prime Minister in the UK and in the whole of Europe. It is reported that Margaret and the Queen did not have good working relationship. Thatcher made a lot of changes in governance, and these did not sit well with the Queen in a couple of instances. But Margaret Thatcher gave due respect to the monarchy in line with tradition and law. And when she made the decision to resign from office, she first briefed the Queen before making the resignation public. Margaret Thatcher was the Queen's longest serving Prime Minister, having served for 11 years. The next was John Major, who served from 1990 to 1997. John had a good working relationship with the Queen. He was Prime Minister at a time the Queen had to contend with serious family issues, namely the breakdown of the marriages of 3 of the Queen's children. John had great respect for the Queen and described her as compassionate, shrewd, well-informed, pragmatic, and wise. Tony Blair was the 10th Prime Minister to work with the Queen. He served from 1997 to 2007. Tony was a charismatic politician whose popularity went beyond borders. He brought a new kind of politics to his administration, and these did not always sit well with the conservative-minded Queen. It is reported by Tony himself that the Queen once said the following to him, unquote, "You are my 10th Prime Minister. The first was Winston. That was before you were born." Tony was remarkably popular throughout his tenure as Prime Minister. The next was Gordon Brown, who served from 2007 to 2010. Gordon had a good working relationship with the Queen. David Cameron succeeded Brown and became the 12th Prime Minister to work with the Queen. He was in office from 2010 to 2016. He was already known to the Queen before his assumption of office. The 13th Prime Minister was Theresa May, who served from 2016 to 2019. She enjoyed a much more pleasant relationship with the Queen than Margaret Thatcher. The 14th Prime Minister was Boris Johnson, who served from 2019 to 2022. Boris had a good working relationship with the Queen and spoke good about her in public places. The last is Liz Truss. She met the Queen briefly at her Balmoral residence, soon after she emerged as the 3rd female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The Queen died shortly thereafter, and Prime Minister Truss has not had any working relationship with the Queen. Her working relationship will be with the Queen's successor, Prince Charles III. Many thanks for watching this edition of Back in History, and do remember to subscribe to the channel for regular notifications.